How's it going, fight fans? Welcome to mindforcombat. If you're new to the channel, my name's Rohan, and this is my channel where I do fight sports related content. If you're new to the platform, why don't you help me grow my small little platform? All you have to do is subscribe to the channel, like the video if you like it, maybe hit that bell icon so you get notified every time I upload a video. With that said, it's a very interesting fight that I hope goes ahead with the one card. Now, obviously with everything that's going on, I don't know if this card's going to go through, and just quickly, I did touch on this in my last video. With everything that's going on, if you guys are out there anywhere in the world and you ain't got no one to talk to about this stuff and you're going through some tough stuff, feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to help you guys out in any way, shape or form. Even if you're new to the platform, I'm happy to speak to any of you guys. So if you need anyone, remember, I've always got your back. With that said, I'm very interested to see how this fight can play out and whether or not it happens as part of this card. Let's hope it happens one day, because there's a trilogy that me as a one championship buff, I've been hoping for and looking forward to, and it's one that very much excites me, and that's of course between one championship's double champ Aung La Nsang and Vitaly Bigdash, the former world champion. That's a very, very interesting fight, and I can't wait to see this play out. For Aung La Nsang, he carries the weight of a nation on his shoulders, Myanmar to be precise. He's a current dual weight champion who just knocked out the heavyweight champion in one championship. So does that open up the door for a potential third world championship for Aung La Nsang? I believe it does. Yeah, most certainly. I am confident that it does. Also, coming into this fight, he's already a superstar. He's already won championships, premier stars that they use for promotion. If he can get past the hurdle that is Vitaly Bigdash to revenge what is his last loss for once and for all and finish that trilogy, he truly sets himself apart from the rest of his competition. For Vitaly Bigdash, this is the last opportunity in a career that, whilst it started with huge promise, it hasn't really lived up to the heights that I had anticipated that it would reach, and most certainly that his fans had anticipated that it would reach. This is one last attempt to show the world just how good he is. Take out Aung La Nsang, cap off the trilogy, win a world title, and then with Aung behind him, he could move on to set aside his own legacy. He's now 35 years old, and he's really got to be wanting to do it now. With that said, let's go through the tape. As mentioned, Vitaly Bigdash is 35 years old. That doesn't make him that much older than Aung La Nsang, who stands at 34 years old. So they're both there in their careers. I believe both of these men are at the peak of their careers right now. I don't believe that they're old enough that they've started to decline yet. And also from their performances, I don't feel as though they've started to decline. So that's very, very interesting, because they're meeting at a point in their careers where they're both peaking. So it's interesting to see how this one plays out. Aung La Nsang comes into this fight with a professional record of 26 wins and 10 losses. And he fights Vitaly Bigdash, who has a professional record of 10 wins and 2 losses. Aung is, of course, vastly more experienced than Vitaly Bigdash, but that experience, you've got to take it with a grain of salt, because not that long ago, they were splitting fights. So actually, I don't believe that experience is going to impact him a lot. The one thing I will say, though, is that since their last fight, Vitaly Bigdash has only had 2 fights, whereas Aung has been very, very active, and I believe that's going to be a big impact in this fight, and that shows on their records as well. Aung stands at 6'1", which makes him an inch taller than Vitaly Bigdash, who's 6'2" on the dot. Aung La Nsang has a reach of 74 inches. Well, there or thereabouts. Again, I can't find it, but I have to assume that Vitaly Bigdash has at least a 75-inch reach. Just looking at his frame and having seen his fights, I always struggle to find one championship reaches. But I tell you what, I can work out someone's reach just by looking at them. I'm normally pretty spot on with this. Being around the fight game for a long time, trained for a long time, so I can normally suss out a fighter's reach just by looking at his frame. So I would assume it's there or thereabouts. I don't think there's a big advantage either way in this fight, so I don't think it matters anyway. Their styles. So Aung La Nsang, he's a brawler. He loves to get into brawls. He hits hard and he hits often. He's very, very high paced, and that shows that he has great conditioning, because he keeps up that incredibly high pace throughout the course of the fight. He fights Vitaly Bigdash, who's also a striker, and he's got that striking style where he's devastating. He utilizes his kicks, and he's got finishing power in both his punches and his kicks, and this makes for a very, very fun fight, which is also why this trilogy is happening, because whilst Bigdash hasn't done much since their second fight, this makes for a very, very fun, stylistic fight. Almost like when Carlos Condit was given his shot with Robbie Lawler, even though he hadn't really done nothing to earn it. He had just beaten Thiago Alves after a long layoff, but we knew that was going to be an exceptional fight, and it was an exceptional fight. So this is almost similar in that regard. So I believe that's what set this fight up. For key wins for Aung La Nsang, obviously he's beaten Vitaly Bigdash himself, and he's beaten Brandon Vera, but he's also beaten another fighter that I very much respect in Ken Hasegawa. That's a very talented fighter. For Vitaly Bigdash, his best win in his career is most certainly going to be Aung La Nsang himself. Let's move on to the issues. For Aung La Nsang, I believe with how aggressive he is, he can become a bit predictable and he can leave himself open. When you fight in a fighter like Vitaly Bigdash, that will leave opportunities. Now, I'm not going to reference the first two fights too much, just because I believe that Aung La Nsang has grown so much since those fights. And in a lot of ways, from his last performance, I believe that Bigdash has as well. I believe this is almost a standalone fight. While you can take some certain traits from it, I think that this fight should be treated as a standalone fight. The issues for Vitaly Bigdash is going to be that he's not very well-rounded, in my opinion. I believe that he's also kind of predictable in that sense. Also, his inactivity. He's only fought twice and he's lost one of those fights. He has no real momentum coming into this fight, other than the fact that he has previously beaten Aung La Nsang. I'm very interested to see the mental aspect of this game and see how this fight plays out in the cage. The X factor for Aung La Nsang is going to be A, momentum, B, the fanfare, most certainly going to be on his side. He's going to be a superstar on this card, and most certainly his finishing ability and his power. For Vitaly Bigdash, his X factor is going to be knowing that he's beaten Aung La Nsang previously, and his power as well. With that said, let's get into this prediction. It's a very interesting fight for me because on the feet, I believe that Vitaly Bigdash is the superior striker. However, that alone is not enough to win a fight like this. There is certain things that Aung La Nsang bring to this fight that really stand out. Firstly, his pace and his aggression. And whilst that would be okay if Vitaly Bigdash had been active and he had been showing that he can deal with it consistently, he has not been. He hasn't fought hardly at all. He's fought twice, like I've mentioned a couple of times now. And when you've been inactive and not been fighting, being in there with an animal who's going to be in your face the entire time and throwing at you non-stop, and he is vastly more aggressive than any fighter that you've fought since fighting him, it's really no way to prepare yourself but to be in that lion's den consistently, and he has not done that. What that means to me is that although he'll have a lot of success early in this fight, in my opinion, Aung La Nsang will take on as this fight goes on. And Aung La Nsang being as durable as he is, I believe he will start to dominate this fight as it goes into the later rounds. For my official prediction, I'm going to go with Aung La Nsang to get a finish either late in the third or early in the fourth round. I don't think Vitaly Bigdash is going to be able to keep up with this. So fight fans, for my official prediction, as I said, Aung for the late finish. With that said, of course, Bigdash has his opportunities and he may have done a lot in his time off. I haven't seen it yet, so I have to lean on Aung. Guys, I hope you guys are excited for this fight. Definitely give it a watch if it does happen in the end. And if it doesn't happen whenever it gets rescheduled, definitely check this one out. It's a brilliant fight, and I cannot wait for it. I hope you guys are as excited for this card as I am. And whether or not it happens, let's give one championship the support that it deserves when it does come around. As I said, if you guys need anything, obviously hit up your boy. I'm always here. And thank you for watching, guys. As always, I'm Rohan, and this is Mindful Combat.